I think that one of the biggest scams going on is that enlightenment and the truth are somehow unattainable, that they're so grand and so big and so esoteric that you can't, they're just not, it's not in the cards for you to be able to actually experience what those words really mean. And I think that's a lie. Buddha pretty much, he kind of blew everybody's mind. Everybody that talked to him was just completely taken aback by his wisdom and his presence. And they asked him, "What are you? Like, are you a prophet?" And he said, "No, I'm not a prophet." And he said, "Are you a saint?" "No, I'm not a saint." I said, "Well, what are you?" He said, "I am awake." The other quote I'm thinking of is out of the Gospel according to Thomas, where Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth, but men do not see it. So if we're starting to, I'm trying to hit these different points like enlightenment and now truth, and what are those two things pointing to? And they're both pointing to a reality that most people are blind to. It's as though they are in the dark, right? So the word enlightened would mean somehow they've come into the light, like the man in Plato's cave. And Neo, he wakes up and finds himself in the quote unquote real world. And in Narnia, in the Chronicles of Narnia, the kids go into a whole new world that exists, it's real, but nobody else knows about it but them. So I'm suggesting that we look at enlightenment as an experience of that which transcends the illusion. One of the things we do in our training is we start off with concentration because if there's anything that gets in the way of our direct perception of the truth, it's our mind, right? Our presuppositions, our assumptions about things. And the way our brain works, our brain acts more like a filter than anything else. It's a reducing valve. So whatever it is that's real, the brain's primary job is to filter most of it out because it would be overwhelmed if it didn't. We would be overwhelmed. I mean, all we'd have to, it's not hard to realize that so much of the world that we know exists is invisible to us, right? We don't see electromagnetic waves. We don't see gravity waves. We don't see, we see only that which falls within a very narrow spectrum of resolution, within a range of size. We don't see anything, with our physical senses. We don't see anything that our eyes can't resolve, right? So there's so much more here, and things that affect us all the time, things we use all the time, like, radio waves and microwaves and, radiation. Radiation can affect you drastically, and yet nobody can see it or feel it. We live in an environment of thought where, when we're with other people, like now, we have like these clouds of thought that are around us, and these clouds of thought are trying to relate to each other. And it's a very difficult thing, but we can't see that, right? But it's obviously real. I mean, something real is going on when we communicate, because we deal with it. And we know when we're connecting, if we're at all self-aware, we know when we're connecting, when we're not. So much of the world that we live in is invisible to us. So a person who's enlightened would be a person who can see more of what's real. So the question is, and this is something I've been working on for a while now, and it's starting to make a lot of sense to me. that when Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth, but men do not see it, and Buddha said, I'm awake, and we have these stories like the Matrix or the Chronicles of Narnia or the Wizard of Oz or Time Bandits, those kinds of those stories, they all point to something that's much greater than we're aware of at any given time. And I say that that world is more immediately accessible to us than we've been led to believe. Because anything that is super special, you know, in terms of philosophy or in terms of spirituality, the more special it is, the bigger and harder to attain it becomes. In the retelling of the story, every time somebody talks about enlightenment, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you talk about, well, who's enlightened? Well, that person just gets higher and higher and higher on a pedestal until you can't even see them anymore, right? But then if you ever met them, you'd think, this guy is supposedly enlightened, you know, or this woman, you know, you wouldn't accept it. It's like they did the same thing to Jesus, right? He went home and nobody, you know, who the hell are you? You're just Joseph's son. You're just a carpenter. What are you trying to, you know, get down off your high horse? But they, you know, they put him on the high horse, right? Mm-hmm. So they project that onto him and say, you know, we're not going to listen to you because we know you. We know who you are. So I think that one of the, you know, the biggest scams going on is that enlightenment and the truth are somehow unattainable, that they're so grand and so big and so esoteric that you can't, there's just not, it's not in the cards for you to be able to actually experience what those words really mean. And I think that's a lie. And I think Jesus knew it was a lie too, because he said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Mm-hmm. And that supposedly was the good news, right? That's what that word gospel means. It means the good news.
Yeah.
So Jesus shows up and says, hey, it's right here. It's right here. How do you find it? You see? So, as it turns out, there are ways to find it. The thing is that you have to disabuse yourself of certain concepts, which means, like, if you were to find enlightenment, if you were to become enlightened, that you would somehow just start, your whole being would just change, you know, in a flash, and you would be glowing with light, and you'd be, you know, in eternal bliss all the time, right? And that's just more of that. Let's make it so big that nobody can reach it. And of course, if you're a spiritual teacher, you want to keep people reaching for something unattainable, because then you can be the one to be in charge, right? You can keep them guessing and keep them following you. So, and as long as you can keep moving the target, you see, then you can get them to follow you forever. So, and that's real, right? I think you know, and Jesus knew it was real too, because he was very, very hard on hypocrites. And he said, you guys, you know, he's talking about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, said, you guys, you hold the keys to the kingdom, but you neither go in yourself, nor do you let others go in. You see, so this is like a universal constant. This is something we always have to deal with. And you'll find it in other disciplines too, you know, university level. You'll find there'll be professors who the last thing they want is for you to get smarter than they are, because it makes them look bad and they feel threatened by it, right? So we have to be honest with ourselves and not buy into that. Enlightenment is something that you can experience the real. You can experience the real world. And you go in and you come back out. And you go in again, and you come back out. And every time you go in, it changes you a little bit. And then you come out and you've had this experience, and then it makes you see the world differently. And it reorganizes your thinking, because you realize that more and more what you see and experience seems to be like a veneer. And this is actually in terms of spiritual initiation, this is like the first initiation. And an initiation is a shift in consciousness. It's where your awareness all of a sudden questions the reality that you have been taking for granted. It's like the first step on the path of initiation is when you realize, hey, maybe all of this, maybe there's more than what I'm seeing. Maybe there's more to the world than what than I'm dealing with. You see, that's the first step on the road, on the path of initiation. And then once that gets like a splinter in their mind, like Neo, he says, the thing he wanted to know more than anything else was, what is the matrix? You see? So there are ways to do it. And as it turns out, they're not that difficult. They're not that hard to do. You do have to have some control of your thinking, your mind. You have to be able to relax enough and trust enough to where your thoughts slow down and you can open up without fear of something coming in and inhabiting you, which is what a lot of people, especially amongst fundamentalists, they say, do not meditate, because you open yourself to demonic possession. So you have to be able to relax. You have to have trust in God. And this is where Paul, he emphasized having faith. Faith and trust and this concept are almost identical. So it's like you have to know that if you point your awareness toward God, that you can open up to that, and then that's all that's going to come in, is more of reality and not more illusion. You see? So relaxation is very important, in relaxing in your mind, right? Really relaxing in your mind to let go of your grip on reality, you see? So you relax in your mind, you orient yourself towards the ultimate, the most high, and you open up to it. And as you do, it starts to reorganize you, and new experiences will happen. You'll start to have inner experiences that will show you what you suspected is true, that the world you are accustomed to, there's something not quite right about it, that there's more. Now, this is what drove the scientific revolution, right? Those guys looked at the world and refused to go along with the word from above, which it was all cloaked in secret theological language. And they decided, no, we're going to find out. We're going to find out for ourselves. And so they started to delve into things, and then things really started to open up, and we're living proof of that now. So this does not just only apply to spirituality. This applies to everything. So whenever we think we know something, we think we've got a handle on reality, humility dictates that we admit to ourselves, at some point down the road, we're going to discover we're completely wrong about this. And so if you can kind of project yourself into the future and take on that mindset, like go 20 years in the future, and then turn around and look at where you're at now and what you believe now, and see if your mind doesn't maybe reveal a few things to you, that are completely off, that are completely misconceptions, right? So it's a good, so we've got, you have to be relaxed. You have to be able to relax your mind. And you have to, and the more you relax your mind, the quieter your mind gets. The quieter your mind gets, the more control you have over it then, and you can orient your attention in whichever direction you want. And if you direct it up, and I mean that both literally and figuratively or metaphorically, to the highest conception, the highest connection you can form, and then you open up to that, you see, then you start to transform. You start to transform from the inside out.